Hello, what's going on? We are live. I'm Doug Cunnington from Niche Site Project, and we're going to talk about niche sites and keyword research and SEO. However, I don't have a specific topic, so I'm going to be relying on you, viewers, to let me know what questions you have and let me know if you could hear me. I think it's working, but it's always good to get confirmation from the crowd out there. And I know that we have a few people in the house. We have Masher and Paul and Dan and a few questions popping up already. So I'll go ahead and hit those. It will help me out a ton if you're able to put in, hashtag question or questions, and it'll just be much easier for me to see. Another quick reminder, you only need to ask one time. I can see the questions on here, so if people get excited because I don't answer the question right away, there's a bit of a delay and it takes a minute or two, especially if I'm answering another question, to get to yours. So if you haven't signed up for my email list, you can go to nichesiteproject.com, click the green button, enter your name and email, and I give you all my templates and systems and point you in the right direction. You sign up for the email list at that point. So I'm able to point you in the direction of good content and all that stuff. So let's just start answering questions. And I have seen the confirmation that people can hear me, so that's always helpful. All right, let's do it. Also, if we run out of questions, I can hop over to Keyword Chef and do a demo of that. People really enjoy that in the last couple weeks, so we can have a look at that if we want to. So first off, Paul says this. Paul says, what do you do with old content that didn't rank well? So you have a couple options here. You potentially can delete it and then redirect it if there's something relevant, or there's something called a 410, like a redirect 410, which essentially says this content is gone. It's no longer relevant. There's nothing else that's similar to it, and it tells Google and other search engines that that piece of content won't exist. I've had that a couple times where I've maybe published a landing page that was relevant 5 years ago and it's no longer relevant. Maybe I was a guest on a podcast and I said, hey, you can go to nichesiteproject.com/podcast. It doesn't exist anymore. So obviously no one's going to land there. It's completely irrelevant. So I could just delete it. There's no links going to it, that sort of thing. As far as content that didn't rank that well, but you think it's still a viable option, you can, number one, just leave it and don't worry about it. So that's an option as well. And then the other thing is you can go and you can try to improve the old content that isn't ranking as well. So this is probably a good practice to do anyway. There's a few things that you can do. You can update the existing content, you can add more content, and of course you can remove some of that content. Adding frequently asked questions is a really simple way to add additional content and add really more long tail keyword phrases in there. So there's a few tutorials about adding content in the form of FAQs. Additionally, and there's a piece of content on my site that I'm about to engage in this exact process. So it used to rank really well, but it's kind of old and it needs to be updated. So I am going to probably revamp that page. I think it ranks maybe like, say, in the top 15, like 10 to 15 or so. And it used to actually rank number one. And then it slowly dropped down as I stopped updating it, and some of the content on there isn't all that relevant or great or up to date. So I'm going to actually go back and revamp the whole thing. I'm going to do analysis and some research to see what other topics I need to cover, things that are no longer relevant. I could take them out. So in that case, I know that it's a good keyword. It's just not ranking that well. And I'm thinking, hey, I want to improve it. So I'm going to go and do that. So Paul, good question. Quick recap. You can add more content You can sort of revamp it and edit it. You can remove the content altogether if it's not relevant, or you can do nothing. Sometimes you will have a piece of content that doesn't do well for a while, and then an algorithm update will come through, and then you'll actually be able to rank better for with no action taken. So let's hit the next question here. Dan says, volume versus quantity in terms of content, which is the better path? So there's no one answer to this one. I have typically taken a volume route, but you have to have some minimum threshold of quality. So if you publish a whole lot of content, but it's really bad grammar, it's not cohesive, it doesn't make sense, people are not going to read. Even if you rank well for a couple days, the visitor metrics are just going to be terrible. So there's a good chance that you won't rank for very long if you do. So there has to be some kind of balance, and this is, kind of a non-answer, but anyone that gives you like a completely straight answer and say, hey, volume, the quality is irrelevant, then I wouldn't trust them. Or if someone said, hey, quality is the only, oh, and I'm just reading it. So volume versus quantity, which it seems like that is the same thing. So maybe I'm misunderstanding your question here, but essentially there has to be some minimum threshold of quality and probably a minimum threshold of volume of content. So you may be asking about the length of the content versus the number of pieces of content. So that's the other way to interpret it. And in that case, I would say it depends on the topic. So if you have, really you want to aim around the length of things that are currently ranking, say in the top 10 or so, that are similar to your site. So if everything is pretty short, say 1,000 words or so, you can publish longer than that, of course, but I wouldn't publish like 5,000 words and everything else is 1,000 words. There's a bit of a disconnect. Now, it might work and you may test that out, but you have to have the opportunity to, separate those out and adapt if you need to. So I think that is probably what you're asking. And, the other thing is, you could test to see what seems to be working, but generally following the trend of the other sites that are similar to yours ranking. And what I mean by similar to yours, if you have an e-commerce site, you should look at the other e-commerce sites. If you have a content site with display ads and affiliate offers, then you should look at other sites that are similar to yours. All right. Dan also says, ways to increase your DR and DA with forums or profile creation. Does it work? I don't have enough recent data to know that for sure. I think with forums, you probably can increase it. But the thing is, most of those, not all, but most forums and most profiles are going to be no follow backlinks. So it's a little bit tougher to boost your DR and DA in that way. That said, I think if you use those in conjunction with other link building methods, then you probably will be maybe those will help. So diversity is probably pretty good to add to your backlink profile. I mean, no follow links are natural as well. Next, we have, and David's on. David is a kind moderator, so thanks a lot for your help keeping order in the chat. Dan says, is Keyword Chef really worth it? Ahrefs can do the same thing, but it's a little more manual. What's the main reason to use it? If you're already using Ahrefs, then you're probably fine. The big advantage with Keyword Chef is it sort of auto filters the keywords that you're probably not too interested in. But if you're already using Ahrefs, that's the full suite. It's a full content marketing suite of tools, including probably the superior backlink database out there. So if you're using Ahrefs, you don't really need to use Keyword Chef unless you just want to. That said, I know some people that do use Keyword Chef because it does filter out all the garbage, and it's just another place to find keywords, especially long tail keywords. Dan, you can get like 1,000 credits if you use my affiliate link down there. Hell, you may be able to do it without, but I do have an affiliate link to test it out. But yeah, if you're using Ahrefs or SEMrush or any other tool, and you already have an effective way to filter that you're happy with, then you're probably fine. Masher says, is it easy to sell a website that has declining traffic and income? It all depends on the price. So if you're asking for the price based on, say, the previous 12 months and the last couple months are at a decline, you're probably not going to be able to get whatever the average is. So it all depends on the price. It comes down to supply and demand. So if you're asking what doesn't seem to be the market price, then you're not going to be able to sell it very easily. But if you're, let's say a site gets 100,000 visitors per month and it's declined to 50,000 visitors per month. Yeah, there's still some good value in the site. But if you're trying to get what the site would have been worth if it wasn't declining and if it was just flat, then you're going to have a hard time. But if you've priced it at the 50K per month traffic range, then you'll probably be in good shape. So it all depends on the price. And you could sell, some people look for distressed sites because they know what to do to fix them up. So it just depends on the price. And speaking of Keyword Chef, we may fire it up in a few minutes here just to see how it's going. But if you do have questions, feel free to ask. Afnan says, how good is Haro for service-based websites? If it's not that effective, what other ways can we increase backlinks? All right. So it is effective for, I would think, all websites. If you're a service-based website, depends on the query, but typically the reporters are looking for experts. So let's say it's a marketing website. If there's some question about a marketing related topic or something like that, you'd easily be able to reply. You're a practitioner in that area, so it makes total sense for you to reply to it. So it would be fine. And then just in general, Haro is effective for, I would say, link building the majority of the time, as long as you have a professional website. Other ways you could build links. The thing is, there's so many ways that you can do it. I always talk about guest posting because it's sort of the most natural kind of manual way to do it. And one thing that I've seen is a lot of the services out there that do guest posting, they'll just like have a database of websites that they've established a relationship with and maybe even a price. So I know a lot of folks are seeing, hey, if you try to get guest posts and you're doing outreach, almost all the time at this point, the webmasters are going to ask for some admin placement fee or something like that. It's, again, because of supply and demand, pretty straightforward. But the funny thing is, a lot of the companies that I've talked to, they have some threshold, right? So they're charging, say, $200 for a guest post. So they have to find the site that you're going to post on. They have to get the content written. They have to make sure that it's published. They have to get your link in there. So there's some overhead involved with it. So that costs money. There needs to be a project manager and a writer. And then typically they're going to have to pay the website. The funny thing is, I hear because of the certain threshold of the price of the guest post that the agency is charging the customer, they can only afford to pay like $25, $40 for any one of those links. So what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, because I get a lot of these pitches myself, and I've started to reply back just to see what happens. Number one, on the other side of the keyboard, there are some really unqualified people doing the communication. It's absurd. I am alarmed at the just horrible communication. So I engaged with one individual. They said, "Hey, I have a bunch of sites that you can guest post on. Just let me know." And I replied back with like, I'm interested. Can you give me more information? They replied back like 5 times with no response from me over the weekend. I don't check my email over the weekend, or if I do, I'm not going to reply back to something like that. So just really poor communication skills. Going off on a tangent here, but the point is a lot of those services are going to end up with what I'm viewing as kind of crappy websites, people that are going to charge, 25, $40 or so. And my hunch is if you could pay a little bit more than that, you're going to wipe out a lot of the sort of crappier, more commodity style guest posting services out there. And I mean, frankly, if it's that cheap, a lot more people are going to post on it because it's cheaper. And then you're going to have a situation where there's a ton of outbound links to websites that are trying to build links for cheap versus if you're able to pay a little bit more. So other effective ways to increase your backlinks, I mean, just straight up networking. There's a lot of different tactics. Some people have gone on like a podcast tour and they're on a bunch of different podcasts, stuff like that. Oh. All right, so Afnan, hopefully that helped. And confirmation, Dan confirmed that his question was about the word count versus the quantity of posts. So yeah, I think my answer stands. And it just depends. I would probably aim towards like a little bit longer word count for or compared to the average of your competitors out there. And Aditya says, are SEO tools useless in 2021? No, they're plenty useful. It just depends on what you're trying to do. All right. Afnan also says, how much content per month should we be trying to add on a new website that has no blog post or articles? Essentially as much as you can. So the faster you publish, the more content you have that has a chance to rank. The sooner it's indexed, the sooner it ages and has a chance to rank and get out of the sandbox. So basically, as much as you possibly can. And it's always a balance. So if people are thinking, hey, I need to do link building and I need to publish, probably splitting your resources is the right move. Maybe early on, I would say publish more content until you get some, whatever you deem is the right amount before you move on to guest posting or link building or promoting the site in general. So that might be 20 posts or it might be 50, and then you'd spend some time promoting the site as well. But publish as much as you can, as fast as you can. Paul says, inserting multiple snippet intent paragraphs in one post, good or bad? I don't have an opinion on that. I haven't done much in the way of that. So I would say, what do you do? Does it work? Like, did you try it? Does it work? And Zatara, what's going on? You made it. All right, quick note before we keep going in, I need to thank a sponsor, and I think I could actually share the screen here. Ezoic, I've been working with them for a few years. They have their new product, it's Leap, and basically it helps you pass core web vitals. Here's some fast facts here. It's replacing the site speed accelerator. It's free for Ezoic monetization customers, and it's more than just the optimization tool. It actually makes it possible for all sites to pass the core web vitals. And again, it's free if you're monetized with Ezoic. So you can check out the link in the description in the show notes here. And there was something else I wanted to point out to you here. So I have been talking to a few people about site speed, and a lot of folks keep recommending paid caching tools, which I actually have been using a paid caching tool over the last few years. A lot of these tools, they have an annual fee. The thing is, if you're not using other speed tools like plugins or maybe a CDN or something like that, you can just use the Leap functionality from Ezoic, and then you don't have to pay for those additional tools. So just another kind of benefit, although it's not obvious, right? Because you won't need those caching or optimizing the CSS or reducing the image size, lazy loading, all those things are pretty much taken care of. So thanks a lot to Ezoic and Leap. I've been working with them for a few years. Highly recommend you check them out. I see we have some other questions here. Dan says, do you think it's better to pump out 100 articles with top 10 items in each article with the notion that down the road you could add more items? Better, or push out the entire amount of items per article, which would take longer? I would actually do neither. I would probably do 3 to 5 items per article and add them later. So it'll be better to have fewer items reviewed. And if you watch some of my older videos, Dan, you'll see or hear that I will often mention that if you have too many choices, it's not as helpful. So if you have 10 or 20 different choices on there, sure, it's a big comprehensive list. But if I'm trying to order something and I want a curated list, if you give me too many choices, then I may not make a decision, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to find something else where it just gives me 3 options or something like that. Go check out Wirecutter, right? They almost never have that many choices. They will have like 3 to 5. Now that said, you can go to Baby Gear Lab and Outdoor Gear Lab, and you'll see that they have more options. However, in the default view, they won't give you they won't give you the full table. They won't show you all of the products. I think they give you 5. So that's a good choice to narrow it down. And then yes, you can add more products later. Next question. Zatara says, my website isn't showing up in the search console. You submitted the sitemap. Is that just the sandbox? So if it's not showing up in the search console, then you don't have it integrated properly. I think maybe you've asked the question with the wrong terms or something like that. So if you mean it's not showing up in the search results, then it could be you're still in the sandbox. You can check out the search console information and it might say something like crawled but not indexed. And a lot of times you'll see this on sites that are young, under 6 months or so. Or one thing to look at, and I experienced this recently, and one of my friends, Adam, over at Niche Website Builders, told me that I had too deep of a click depth, right? So what you want to have is all of your pages within about 2 clicks of your homepage. So that means you should probably have on your homepage a link to your category page, and your category page should have a link to all the other posts within that category. Of course, you can do this differently, right? So if you, let's say you didn't have posts and categories, maybe you have pages and child pages, well, then you would make sure that all of the content is no more than 2 clicks away. However, I have been getting questions recently saying, hey, like 2 of my posts are in index and I have 5 posts and my site is 3 weeks old. Your site's just too young. I wouldn't worry about it at that point. And if you only have 5 pieces of content, well, you really should just publish more. And I saw this with, again, like I said, with one of my sites, and I had a pretty big click depth. So some of the posts were like 10 clicks away. And it was just a bad configuration for WordPress and the theme that I was using. So to get to certain posts, it would take forever. I fixed that and put links from the home page or a category page to all the posts. So eventually Google figured out how to crawl the site. And by the way, I had a site map submitted. Google saw all the content, but it just wasn't indexing it properly. So have a look at that stuff. A nomad overseas says, if I make a video for YouTube and then use the text to create a blog post on an associated site, will that be penalized as duplicate content by Google? Not that I know of. I've done similar things, but I've never done that exactly at scale. I don't think it'll cause a problem, especially if you link them up together. I mean, they're different types of media. So it's like while Google can read the content from a video or transcribe the content from a video, I don't think it's going to cause a problem for you. All right. I'm going to let my voice rest here, and I do want to give a shout out to another sponsor, and that is ODYS, which I need to pull up their video here. Boom. Here's a quick word from our sponsor, ODYS. That's ODYS, and you can find them at ODYS.global. They're the source for aged domains with strong branding and powerful backlinks. Today, we're going to look at a site called Resource VA, and this one is actually a pretty economical one. So it's under $1,000, at least the time that I'm looking at this. And this is a site where you have a couple different options. So Resource VA, and this was targeting Richmond, Virginia initially. And it was all about transforming the workforce and advancing the economic well-being of the region by developing and maintaining a quality workforce. It's 11 years old, founded in 2010. And when I looked at the Wayback Machine, you could tell it's a little bit of an older site in general, but you kind of get an idea about what's going on. And the other areas to talk about, the domain rating is 16 currently, the domain authority is 21. It was as high as a domain rating of 30 over the last few years, but it has slowly declined. Pretty recently, it was around 20. Now, like I said, this site has a couple areas that you could focus on. One is Virginia, right? The state of Virginia in the US, and the other is virtual assistants. If you could somehow marry the two together, I think you'd have a really interesting combination, but a lot of the links do come from the Virginia region or something Virginia related. So when you're thinking about the relevancy of the links, something Richmond related is going to be a little more niche specific. However, when you look at some of the content on the site, it is about job seekers, it's about workforce centers, learning about how to get a job and that sort of thing. So when you dig in, there is a lot of content about the workforce, which is kind of interesting. So if you could marry the two together, then you'd have a very interesting combination. Now, you could have like a sort of a general news blog, a lead generation situation like that. You can have reviews on virtual assistant companies, for example, or hiring virtual assistants. I know there have been a few sites where it just has information about VAs and hiring VAs, and they've done pretty well. You could potentially hook up with like other job boards and job placement services in that fashion and focus on the Virginia specific area. So a couple quick notes. If I look at Ahrefs, I see there are 66 referring domains total. There are 50 do follow referring domains and 128 do follow backlinks overall, which is, that's a pretty good number. I know if you've potentially been listening to some of the interviews with people like Shauna Newman and Adam Smith, you know that obviously the more links you have, the better, but you can get pretty far with a fairly modest site. I believe Adam was saying that the domain rating for one of the sites that he had was roughly, it was like in the teens or something. It could have been Mark. Someone from Niche Website Builders was telling me about it, but I talked to them both very recently. So have a look at Resource VA. And the thing is, ODYS has lots of other domains. So if this domain doesn't interest you, you can of course have a look at all the other domains that they have out there. There are several hundred or thousands. You can filter based on the language, the industry, and all those different details. And basically, you can potentially build a brand new site on one of these age domains. Or if you have an existing site and you think, hey, maybe I want to utilize and acquire another domain and redirect it into yours, that's an option as well. So thanks to ODYS, really appreciate their support. And if you join using my affiliate link, I'd get a small commission, potentially if you buy anything, and you get $100 credit. So it's a win-win for both of us, and I really appreciate the support. All right, and we're back. So we got a few more questions, and I want to thank, we have an intimate small crew today. Everyone's asking great questions and being cool, so I appreciate that. And they are, decent questions, not the, occasionally if I don't have a topic. This used to happen a few years ago when I started doing live streams at first. I wouldn't have a topic, I would just have like a Q&A. And sometimes the questions were, things that you literally could Google and get like the exact answer. And people would ask like the same thing over and over again in different forms. So this one is fantastic. Now I can't do it too often because I know if the wrong people show up, it doesn't work out. So Dan is trying to ask a question. So let me jump ahead and try and figure it out. All right, Dan, I think maybe I didn't see the original question that you asked that makes sense for the context. So I'm going to say everything that you wrote in this thread. So when I search for a keyword and see international domains ranking, do you view that as link competition and therefore easy to rank for? No, I never thought of that. I've never looked or explored it. That could be true, but I have never observed that specifically, nor have I heard anyone say it before. So it could be true, but I just don't know. Next, Paul says, what's my opinion on article length in the future? Longer articles or short to the point articles, and will the length affect the rankings? So I don't typically like to predict the future because there's no real point in it. I haven't explored. And well, the other thing is that, I'm just not super interested in like doing a bunch of research on these certain things. However, I can tell you my thoughts around it, but I'm not predicting the future. Some people make it sound like they know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. So what I can tell you is there was a time before I got started where there was really short content. And then there were some studies, I think maybe I saw it on QuickSprout first, but it was then cited over and over again about like the ideal length of content. And it was something like 1,800 words or so. And that was at a time where 1,000 words was kind of long, 1,000-word blog post. So people started writing longer and longer posts. And longer to the point where I've published a couple posts that were like 10, 14,000 words long. Very long, super comprehensive. And surely I have actually read articles that were that long, not in a long time, but I have done that before. That said, we are now reaching a point where people have published such long content that sometimes the searcher actually wants a shorter, more concise answer. And in general, content that is as long as it needs to be, to the point, without rambling on, without fluff, that's what people want. It's harder to write something in a concise way. So I would say things are probably trending to a little bit shorter, but we're still probably talking the 13 to 2,500 word range. That's probably pretty good. You could probably cover a lot of topics in that length. Now, there are some questions that are quite short and with different snippets that are available in voice search and people using Alexa and Google Home devices and all that stuff. Concise answers are helpful. So even if you have a long piece that's 1,200 words, if you can give a quick answer, that's the right thing to do. As far as affecting rankings, it depends. And earlier someone asked about the content length versus the amount of content you're publishing. And it really depends on the topic. So in general, I would say if you're in the 1,200 to 1,800 word range, you're probably at least you're long enough to compete generally. There will be content in certain niches and certain topic areas and keyword areas where everything is 4,000 words long. And if you want to rank with your competitors, you probably need to be around 4,000 words. So in general, I would look at it that way. If things change, if all of a sudden Google and other search engines are saying, hey, you know what? We don't want long form content. We want it shorter. We'll all have to adapt anyway. We'll have to go and research what changed and what we need to change. Atufa says, I wanted to check how to monetize a travel website during the pandemic besides selling tours. Display ads. So basically, any site that has traffic can probably use display ads as a monetization strategy. Debt Hater says, can I explain what negative SEO is? One of my sites gets a lot of spammy comments with links. Does that mean my site is getting bad backlinks? How can I see my backlinks? Okay, good question. Number one, negative SEO is typically where you get links pointing to your site that are crappy. So those are pointing to your site. You can check your backlinks in a few places. I would recommend the Search Console, right? So you can go to the Search Console and see what external websites are linking to yours. You can download the CSV and review them. Additionally, you can go to Ahrefs, which I mentioned before, and you can go to Ahrefs and get all those backlinks as well and additional data. So you'll have some idea if these are sort of like crappy backlinks or better ones or what. You said that one of your site is getting spammy comments with links. You're not getting bad backlinks in that case, but people are trying to link from your site. So I would look to reduce the spam comments on your site. There's a tool called Akismet. It's made by Automatic, which is the parent company of WordPress. I use that. It works pretty well. There's a couple other plugins or tools that you can use to prevent comment spam like that if you want to, and you could, go find them. But if you use Akismet, it should cut down quite a bit. And, if you have comments open, there's a chance you're going to get a lot of, spammy comments. Okay. Good question, Debt Haters. Ali says, share my thoughts about AI content. Should I publish it in an established website? So I haven't played with the AI tools a lot. I have a little bit, and most of the time the output was pretty shitty and would not stand without editing. That said, most of the reputable AI content generation tools, they seem to let you know ahead of time that it's a good way to get a start and maybe a first draft on the content. You basically probably shouldn't use it as the output without editing it. So your mileage may vary. I've seen some of the content from the AI tools and they're just terrible. They're illegible. It's like some of the people that have done this for a while, you'll remember the article spinners, and basically they would go and grab content from a lot of different websites and then just replace words using a thesaurus type tool. And then you would end up with some kind of mangled, nonsense. And people would publish them on websites that were just there to build links upon. So that said, I think it probably could be interesting to use the AI tools as a starting point in certain areas, but I suspect it's probably not going to be up to the level in the next, year or two. Judging from what I've seen so far, it would have to make, huge changes. And I've seen, some of the examples you may see on like social media or when they're talking about the GPT-3, I think that's what it's called, that AI, linguists, I don't know. The AI interface. I'm just throwing out buzzwords now. I think some of the examples are pretty contrived, and the input data was probably really good because when I've just tried to use it. Actually, and I'm curious, people in the chat, let me know. Have you used AI? Have you gotten out content where you thought, hey, if I read that, I would think that it was written by a real person? Okay. A Nomad Overseas says, can anyone recommend a replacement for Vidnami? It's been bought by GoDaddy and it's going away. I don't know what that is, but if anyone knows, feel free to answer in the chat. Zatera says, what's my process for hiring an editor for publishing content? How many editors do you interview? How do you keep the quality high and the cost low? So number one, Zatara, you're in luck because I've done probably 10 videos on this topic. So you could go look those up. If you want the more concise version, which I recommend, go to Niche Site Project, look up Content Manager, and then you'll probably find a lot of information about hiring people from Upwork. So the best way to find a good editor is to find good writers. So what I would do is hire a team of writers, hire them individually. Some of them are going to be better, some will be worse. The ones that are good, you can ask them to become an editor/content manager. I don't interview anyone. I just give trial jobs. For me, it's completely a waste of time to interview people for this kind of work, because what happens is I can interview them. They could be great in an interview, but I really don't care how they interview. I want them to be able to write and or produce content in some capacity. So the interview is pretty much useless. So I need them to write and see how they perform. If they do a good job writing, then they understand what we're looking for with our content, and you can promote them. I pay by the hour. I have more information on that blog post if you go find it. As far as keeping quality high and costs low, well, those are opposing forces, so you can't have both. It will be cheaper if you hire people directly than if you work with an agency. All right, and Dan's speaking to me here. Any brews on tap for a Wednesday? So later today, I have a couple saisons on tap upstairs, so I'll probably have one that I brewed. It's just a table strength, 4% alcohol or so. And then I may have a little of the Funkworks, what is it called? Tropic King. It's an 8% saison. And Dan misses Colorado and going to Pearl Street down in Boulder. And you know what? Funny enough, now that I live not too far away from Boulder, it's much farther away than where I'm, like a couple miles away from downtown Longmont. So there's so many breweries right around here. So I've been to Boulder just a handful of times since I moved here a couple of years ago. But it's great. So many good beers around here. And I hung out with Matt Giovanisi, who's been on the channel a couple times, and a few other folks down at a place called Wild Provisions, which was actually way down on the other side of Boulder. So it took a while to get there for a happy hour. All right. Moving on. Oh, and is the St. Julian still there? I'm not even sure what that is, so it could be. I'm not sure. Zatara, what processes do I implement to keep quality high? Checklists, checklists and processes so that people don't miss stuff. So, and you're saying what processes? I mean, a checklist and just have the shit that you need done. And then you can have one for the writer, so the editor doesn't have to do as much stuff. And you can have one for the editor, like insert, and this is kind of a content manager, not just a pure editor. Insert internal links, insert external links, add images, process the image in this way. And if you just document everything, you'll be in good shape. Again, I go through all that stuff in some of the other content and videos that I have on the topic. A nomad overseas, do I recommend installing the Jetpack? So Jetpack, for the people who don't know, Jetpack is a plugin by Automatic, which is the parent company of WordPress. And I used to install Jetpack and I used to use pieces of functionality. But the problem with Jetpack is it's bloated. So it turns out it's a suite of tools, and if you just, you're thinking, oh, it's just one plugin, but if you implement and enable all of the different options that you have, you'll end up with a really slow, bloated website. So I generally don't recommend Jetpack at this point. You can use it, and if you just use little pieces of it, it could be okay. But if you don't look out, it's really easy to add too many things. So the benefit is it's integrated directly or it's integrated well with WordPress because it's by Automatic. There's a lot of different functionality and you kind of have everything in there. One downside is some of the functionality you have to pay for, and of course the speed hit that I mentioned before. So I would generally, find other options. Like, for example, I used to have like the Jetpack installed, and then I would have the analytics package or whatever it's called to show me the traffic. Well, it turns out, I had that data on Google Analytics already, but it was just easier to see in my WordPress dashboard. That's not really a good reason to have that analytics piece in there. If I have the data somewhere else, that's a better, more ubiquitous tool, Google Analytics, then the convenience of just seeing it on my WordPress dashboard is not good enough. And I've since removed it. All right. Michael says, I've been curious to get the skinny on the work with some of the content mills. A few videos back, you mentioned the content needed to be sent back for rework, but has the experience improved? Or do I prefer finding people via sites like Upwork? Good question, Michael. A couple different layers on this one. So I've worked with a lot of different content companies over time, and I try to test them out because people ask about them. If it's my preference and I'm about to start doing this again, do I prefer finding people on Upwork? The answer is yes. Typically, it's going to be the same or higher quality, most likely higher quality at probably a lower rate. And I alluded to this before, but when you hire an agency, whether it's content or link building or marketing or whatever, you have these layers of really waste, but it's layers of admin, right? So it's just there's people in place and managers in place to help get the work done. There's value in that for sure. You need to have a project manager to assign the work, make sure things are on schedule and on budget, and all the good things that a project manager could do. And that means you don't have to do it. So there's certainly value added there. The thing is, when those companies are hiring writers, they have to pay them sort of a lower rate, kind of like the link building stuff I was talking about before. So in order for them to, charge you, say, 5 cents per word, they're maybe paying 2 cents per word, and they're maybe finding writers the same place that you would find them. So if you can hire someone for, let's say, 3 cents a word, right? So you may not be able to give that writer as much work as the agency. So there's some value in that, right? For the writer. So if you're able to pay, say, 3 cents a word, you're paying higher than the agency would to that writer, same level of writer, and you're paying less than you would pay the agency. So the writer's earning more, you're paying less. It's a win-win scenario. The thing is, you now have to interact directly with a writer. So the cost there is your time, your mental energy working with the writer. That said, I'm pretty good at hiring people, and I'm pretty good at training and have the documentation to get people ramped up and onboarded and all that stuff. Going back to the video that you asked about where I said hey, I got this content from a company and I thought the intros were too long. It was kind of fluffy. For the people that didn't see that video, basically, let's say I got a review back. It was like best DSLR camera for YouTubing and vlogging, throwing some buzzwords. Some of the content that I got back in the intro, it would be like 300 words long. It would define YouTube. Hey, YouTube was developed by so and so, and then Google bought them in 2007, and all this history lesson that's completely irrelevant to the topic. Then maybe they'd have a definition of vlogging. Vlogging was an outshoot of some of the content over on YouTube, and now it's a big phenomena. Here are some of the biggest bloggers. So they would talk about all this stuff that technically it's relevant to the title, but it's not what the searcher is actually looking for. So those were just, I mean, it was very fluffy. So really, an intro is, especially for this kind of content, it should probably be really tight. It should probably be 3 sentences and then get to the point of what the searcher is looking for. So that said, Michael, it did get better. So after I gave the instructions, it got better. One of the problems, though, is with these agencies, you will find that there are different writers and different people working on your content. So one of the most frustrating things for me is having to repeat myself or correct the same thing again. So from my perspective, I'm dealing with one account manager, one project manager, who I say, here's all the keywords I want for these articles, and then they work with their team to get it. So I would get the content back, maybe it's drafted in WordPress for me, and then I see an issue that I've already corrected the previous month, and the previous month before that. So from my perspective, I'm dealing with the project manager, and it looks like they're just fucking up and doing the same mistake over and over again after I've already told them, hey, don't do that. So if you're working directly with a writer and you're just, maybe they have a couple clients, but you're working with them specifically, there's a good chance after you give them feedback and it's improved and you guys have, you're gelling together, there's a good chance you're not going to have to redo it and teach them again. But with the agencies, you would think they have that solved, but even some of the bigger ones seem to screw it up because they don't have the controls and processes in place. Long answer, huh? All right, Nomad. All right. Nomad Overseas says, do I brew totally from scratch or do I use kits? And you haven't brewed in a while. You had some of the Cooper stuff and you made some stouts from a kit. So I don't use kits anymore. I'm actually I'm a good home brewer, got into judging and stuff, but I will often use extract just because it's a little bit faster. And then I'll do either a partial mash to get some of the other, specialty flavors and use specialty grains. And then I'll use the extract to hit my gravity. Some of the low gravity stuff that I've been brewing recently, I'll just use like a half a pound of, or not half a pound, I'll use a small amount of the steeping grains and mostly just use extract. I use dry malt extract typically. But I have been an all grain brewer since the first year I started back in 2007. All right. And quick note on Jetpack, Michael says he's been trying to stop using Jetpack because it's too overbearing. Oh, Zatera, what's going on? You say that I'm your favorite, and then the course 5-figure niche site was great. So thanks, appreciate that. So question here is, how much informational content should I post on an affiliate blog? I would say at least 50%. Michael says, are the sites I'm working on with the services matching you up with real SMEs on the topic that they're writing. No, there's basically, I haven't actually seen that done in a real way. They may say, yeah, we'll try to match up, or the writers are good enough and they should be able to research, but that's really unusual in my experience overall. Hold on. I think I'm going in and out of focus here. So, it's a little blurrier. Made it worse. Okay, maybe that's better. So typically, they're not experts, and most of the time it's okay. And I have heard from content writers who say no one I've worked with, but more like people that talk about freelancing, and they say, hey, it doesn't matter what the topic is. If you're a good writer, you're going to be able to write content for any topic, even if you don't know anything about it. And a couple issues with that. Number one, I think it could technically be possible that you can write a comprehensive, well-written article, but some of the nuances are going to be a little bit off, and some of the phrasing is probably going to be off. The context may reveal itself to an expert. So if it's a beginner type topic, it's probably going to be okay. But for example, if we're talking about beer, right? So if I read an article, I've brewed probably a few hundred batches of beer. So if I read an article by someone about brewing beer, and I'm an expert, and they were off on a couple little things, maybe the usage of some of the words was a little bit off, I'll be able to tell that they've never actually done it. So it depends on the topic and who the audience is, the typical audience, because it might be, if it's beginner beer brewing topics, then it's probably going to be okay. But if a real expert reads it, then it's not going to come through. And cool. I think we are ramping it down. We're hitting just about an hour here. So I can show you, since I talked about it earlier, Keyword Chef. So does anyone have a topic that they want me to look up and just see what Keyword Chef can do? I have it set here for the US. And basically, you can put in kind of like the broad topic, like cooking, or you can use wildcards if you have a specific set of keywords you're looking for. So if you're looking for product review stuff, you maybe would put in best star for chefs. So you would get a bunch of different product names. However, if you're looking for how-to stuff, maybe it's how to blank and for chefs. I'm not sure I had the right I didn't have the right term there. So what I'll do to buy a little time, I think last week or a couple weeks ago, I actually did a live stream. So I can go to the report section here and look up that old best blank for vlogging. So that's the scenario where we're looking for product keywords. So here are all the 278 results. You can see the search volume, average, and then the high and the low. You can also sort of filter by keyword. So if I was just looking for all the keywords related to, say, iPhones, I can just click that, and then I see all of the iPhone related keywords. So from there, this would actually be pretty useful to do a content cluster on iPhone and vlogging. So that's kind of the content area here. All right, so Dan is asking, are there operators on Keyword Chef? So there are, I don't know off the top of my head, but you can go to the Learning Center, which has a lot of information. So let's see if there are any other wildcard searches. So there is some wildcard functionality. You can do negative keywords. So if you don't want anything related to iPhones, for example, you could just do minus iPhones, and that will remove those keywords. There's some other information here, but the documentation is very good. OSI says, let's look for best acne products. So let's see here. We can give it a quick search. And I would not have searched for that specifically. I would probably just search for like acne products, but we'll see what happens if we just type that in as OSI recommended. So let's see. It does take up to a minute to run here, and this one is searching hard. Afnan says, does Keyword Chef show you the top ranking sites for a keyword? The answer is yes. There's a little SERP plus mark that you can utilize. I don't have that on my account enabled, I don't think, but you can do that, and I think there are probably videos showing how that works. And the reason why it's not enabled on everything, on all accounts, is it actually takes a lot of processing, and it costs money to run that search. So that's why it's not just default enabled. All right, so we have questions and best. We'll get all the keywords here. And as you can see, there are a lot of different ones. So best acne products, and then it sort of has, what seems to be like an auto suggest thread here. And you could just see all these different options: clean and clear, cystic acne, combination skin, while pregnant, dry, sensitive skin. So the cool thing here, and I think maybe Dan, you were asking, is it worth it to get Keywords Chef if you're already using Ahrefs? Well, I think you could probably find these keywords on Ahrefs. But here's the thing: if you're not using if you're not using Ahrefs or another tool, you pay not by month for Keyword Chef, but you buy a certain number of credits. So it's a pay-as-you-go situation. And even if you have a full team of writers or you have a content agency yourself, I mean, the fact is, when you look through these, so I just typed in best acne products, there's 182 results in here. Some of them are going to be duplicate. Some of them are going to be really closely related to another keyword. Some of them aren't going to make sense. So we have like Ireland, Japan, Malaysia. Overall, though, you're going to end up with dozens of keywords. Like potentially you will have 100 keywords that you could use just from this one search. So with that said, even if you had the team of writers and you had the ability to publish 100 articles per month, I mean, you still have enough keywords to last you for a month. The thing is, most people don't have the ability to publish 100 articles in a month. You don't have the team in place. You don't have the revenue to hire an agency to, pay that much. The thing is, you end up with a lot of keywords, enough keywords to last you for a while. OSI says it's a cool tool. How much is it? Making clusters easier with real volume keywords is nice. Yeah, you'll have to check the cost for the credits. So people could watch this in the future. It's relatively inexpensive. All right, Michael says you'll be in Denver for a couple days. First time in Colorado. Any recommend is a must visit? It depends on the beers that you're into, I would say, and where you're staying. I'm big on not having to go really far out of the way to get the beers. So a couple things. If you're in the Boulder area, I would probably check out Avery. They have an awesome new tap room. If you venture out to the Rocky Mountain National Park area, I would check out Oscar Blues. There's a few locations for Oscar Blues, and Left Hand Brewing is in Longmont. So it's amazing as well. If you are not around those areas that I just mentioned, I would probably try to find a good tap room or bar close to where you're staying. And that way you'll be able to sample all the different breweries. So that's one of the things. Like, sure, it's cool to go to the brewery. I don't really want to go on a brewery tour anymore these days. I've been through so many of them. So it's great to go to a tap room that has, 30 different breweries, and you could check out a handful of them. So location, I try to make it convenient so I'm not like driving all over the place or have to get an Uber or anything like that. All right, last couple questions here. We'll wrap it up. All right, so people are a little conversation about Ahrefs versus SEMrush, and I tend to prefer SEMrush over Ahrefs for keyword research. I really don't use Ahrefs for keyword research as much. And I actually like KW Finder, and it depends on what I'm doing. And OSI says Keyword Chef is 1 credit per query. Yes, basically. So again, you can sign up for Keyword Chef. You can get 1,000 credits. I'm an affiliate, so if you eventually sign up, I'd get a commission. So let's see here. Oh, Zatera said, whatever, host a niche site meetup or beer drinking hangout. I potentially would. I have in the past. I've actually done 2 in Atlanta when I've traveled around there. I haven't done anything here in Colorado. I would probably team up. Actually, if I did, I'd probably team up with Matt Giovanisi since we have similar audiences and do similar stuff. And he only lives a couple miles away for people that don't know. He's over at moneylab.pro. So I have no plans in the near term, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't do it. So like I said, I did a couple meetups. Oh, you know what? I forgot. A couple years ago, I actually did one here in Denver, and it was awesome. There were only like 4 people that showed up, so it was like we had lunch and had some beers, and it was pretty fun. It was down. I can't even remember where it was. Some place that was kind of centrally located. I was staying in Parker at the time, so it was kind of on the south side of the city, southeast side of the city. But anyway, I'd be open to it in the future. I don't have as big of a desire right now to pull something together. I just did a bunch of social things recently, so I'm like, oh, I need some downtime. But anyway, Zatira, are you in the Denver area? I think there's more people around here now that I've talked about it a little bit more, that I'm in the Denver area. But yeah, in Atlanta when I did the meetup, I think there were like 15 people, something like that. And that was during about a year ago, last summer, pandemic time frame. So we met outside at a park. It was a good time overall. All right, cool. I think I'm going to wrap it up here. So thanks everyone for hopping on. Good questions. Good session today. We'll catch you soon. Oh, Zatira says I'm in Canada, but you would make the trip. Man, that's a long way just for a little meetup. So, but I appreciate it. I'm glad you said that. Have a good can't talk today. Have a great day out there. We'll talk to you soon.